Hello and welcome, or indeed maybe welcome back to this Createch stage at CogX 2020. My name is Alice Thwaite. I'm a tech philosopher and ethicist, and I teach ethics to technologists, and I run the Echo Chamber Club, which looks at healthy and democratic information environments. This has been an absolutely phenomenal program, I think, on this stage over the last few days. I would absolutely encourage you to check out the YouTube if you've missed any sessions. But don't do that just now, because we're about to go over to Jez Walters, who's editor of What's New in Publishing. And the panel that we're looking at is Beyond Print, the disruption of traditional business models, traditional publishing business models, I should probably say. So we're just waiting for Jez to come on right now. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Hi, Alice.
Hi, and I'll leave you to introduce the rest of the panel, and I hope you have a very good event.
Thank you very much, Alice. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Jez Walters, and I'm the editor of What's New in Publishing. I'll be moderating this afternoon's session entitled Beyond Print. I'd like to warmly welcome our three very special guests today. Our first speaker, Ferguson, Ecommerce Director of Marie Claire Edit. Our second speaker is Kate Slesinger, Publishing Director of Tatler and Vanity Fair, both iconic Conde Nast titles, of course. And finally, we have Alex Hudson, Editor of Newsweek International. We will give each speaker 15 minutes before taking a short break and reconvening on the hour for our audience Q&A. But first up, we have Emily from Marie Claire Edit, part of TI Media in the UK. Before we actually ask Emily some questions, I'd like to give a little background about Marie Claire Edit. Globally, Marie Claire engages 75 million women across 29 markets. It's a huge publishing brand. In the UK last year, Marie Claire ended its print magazine and went digital only because consumers and advertisers are pivoting online. In the fashion and beauty sector, for example, print display advertising was down 30% last year alone. The publisher subsequently focused on Marie Claire UK's digital business, and at the heart of this strategy was the further development of its online fashion aggregator platform, and that's Marie Claire Edit. Launched in November 2018 as a simple prototype, Marie Claire Edit now has over 1.3 million products from over 50 major fashion brands and retailers from across Europe. Consumers can shop by search bar, or they can select from items handpicked by members of the editorial team. Marie Claire Edit has a 6% conversion rate and an average basket size of £400. Emily, as e-commerce director, now drives over £4 million a month in fashion sales for retailers. Revenues are expected to now make up over 35% of all revenues in 2020, compared to 2% when she joined in 2017. Emily, welcome.
Hi.
I'd like to welcome our second guest. Kate Schlesinger is the Publishing Director of Tatler and Vanity Fair, two iconic Conde Nast titles. Before I introduce you to Kate, I'd like to give a very short background about these two publications. Tatler was first published in 1709 and remains the essential high society read. It has a combined print and digital circulation of nearly 80,000, and unique users to its website totaled 780,000 between March and May of this year. Vanity Fair was first published in 1913 and covers Hollywood, high finance, media, politics, and culture. Vanity Fair has a combined print and digital circulation of 70,000, and 1.35 million unique users visited its site between March and May of this year. Kate is working on numerous alternative revenue streams and brand extensions, including, and this isn't an exhaustive list by any stretch, Tatler's Beauty Hall, which is an online shopping event, online wedding consultancy with Tatler's wedding editor, Vanity Fair's The Future of online conversation series with travel editor. And Kate has also taken the Tatler Schools Award online and expanded it into a month-long education event, tackling different themes each week. Kate, welcome to CogX.
Thank you, Jez. Pleasure to be here.
My first question is, we hear so much about the death of print. Working for a company that has traditionally had glossy magazines at the center of its output, is there an argument that says that print is still relevant?
I actually believe that print continues to have relevance. I think actually I should say firstly that the extraordinary times that we're finding ourselves in have really exacerbated every trend that was out there before we went into lockdown. And I think there was a sort of murmuring at the beginning of this year that, actually Gen Z really are enjoying print as a sort of welcome relief from just constantly being on a screen. And I think lockdown has really sort of emphasized that, and there is a sense in which we're all tired of virtual, and there is a print to relieve that. And print is a real lean-in experience. You have to kind of engage with print. So I think it is still relevant, but I think what's really exciting about the world that we're in now is that print is sort of the wellspring from which everything else, comes. And certainly on the two titles that I work on, they've been around in print for many, many, many years, and Tatler recently celebrated its 310th anniversary. So, it's not like print hasn't been successful for the two magazines that I'm on. And I think that this whole notion of having a very strong foundation from which you can then do other things. So, we've got very successful websites on both the magazines, as you rightly say. Tatler, we never more so than at the moment, actually. But you have to have the print underpinnings in order to kind of build from there. And everything that we do, be it virtual events or real life events or shopping events, and all the kind of various projects that we're working on at the moment, really have the success that they have because the brand is very strong, and because the print has established a very sort of strong underpinning.
Got you. Kate, one of the things that Conde Nast has expanded into is live events in quite a big way. This year was set to be the boom of live events, 2020, but of course, since the pandemic, everything has changed. Could you tell me a little bit about what your thinking is now moving forward, and also Conde Nast's thoughts moving forward about live events and where they fit into your portfolio, and to what degree you're going to focus on them now that live events may be more difficult to be held?
Yes, I think it's a great shame, because we were set to have an amazing year for live events across the Conde Nast portfolio, and certainly on the titles that I run, our live events, had a huge spectrum of activity. We had, on the one hand, on Vanity Fair, we had a huge climate change and sustainability summit in the offing. On Tatler, we had parties, as you can imagine, sort of lots of parties in parties with fashion brands, helping them launch new collections, and all sorts of things were being planned, and everything has had to be shelved. But I think, again, the lockdown has forced us to be very creative very quickly, and has shown us that actually it is possible to pull off some really exciting things in the virtual space that we wouldn't maybe have discovered or needed to kind of get into when we had so much going on in a live event. Because don't forget, with live events, the practicalities and the planning and the locations and the venues, it's a huge undertaking. I won't say that it's more complicated than a virtual event, but certainly just there is something about doing a live event which just everything has to stop, and you're kind of just doing that live event, but at the same time you're trying to keep the business underway with print and the digital and all the other channels. So in answer to your question, I think virtual events are here to stay. And I think a lot of what we want to do on my two titles is really come up with good ideas for virtual events. On Tatler, we've had virtual wine tastings, very on brand. And on Vanity Fair, we had just this Monday, we had the launch of the Vanity Fair Future of series, where we interviewed the first woman astronaut, Kathy Sullivan, who has just gone down to the Mariana Trench and again she's gone as far down as she went up, and that launched our Vanity Fair Futures series, which again was really well attended online, and it's something that we will continue. So I think the live events, the kind of touchy-feely sensation of being in a room with someone, having dinner, having cocktails, breaking out, networking, it's difficult to replicate that virtually, but I think there is a very exciting future for virtual events.
Thank you, Kate. I've got another question moving on from that, is that Conde Nast and Tatler and Vanity Fair in particular have been home to a lot of print advertising and digital advertising, of course. But given the pandemic and the ramifications for brand spend in advertising, how I understand you have an ongoing push to retain and grow display advertising on all your platforms. Can you explain to other publishers how you're doing it and what they might learn from that?
How we're retaining display advertising.
Yeah, and convincing brands things to continue advertising at a time when the future's unclear to them. I was reading a piece today by the brand manager of Jaguar, and he was saying that one of the worst things a brand can do right now is go dark, and that actually their presence at this point is more important than ever.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. Going dark is really, I mean, history has shown that when brands go dark, even if they go dark for as short a period as 3 months, it has an effect. I think consumers want to have that kind of maintained conversation with advertisers. We did a piece of research in May actually at Conde Nast. It had a huge sample size actually, 2,500. We did a piece of research into people's attitudes during lockdown, and I think 80% of the people that we surveyed said that they expected advertisers to continue talking to them and to kind of position their message so that it was still relevant during the times that we're in. Yes, so a lot of what we're doing, as you rightly say, is we want to keep the advertisers close. We want to keep them in. I think it's not always possible to convince them that they need to kind of keep doing their display programs and schedules as ever was, because we are in very different times. But I think the biggest growth area for us is obviously native advertising, and be that in print or on digital. So a lot of native advertising is coming in to kind of replace the display. But so long as they're still having that dialogue with our audiences, that's really what we want them to do.
Thank you, Kate. I've got one final question for you, is regarding themed issues. I've heard a lot of publishers talk about that there's an increasing need for themed issues, particularly at this time and moving forwards. Is that something that you're pivoting towards?
Yes, I think themed issues are really interesting because they speak to the interests of discrete communities within our audiences. And one of the joys of working on the titles that I'm working on is that we have we've got now fairly well established a sort of online community on Tatler called the Tatler Address Book, which has various different categories, various different communities, if you like, and we're trying to kind of reverse those into print. So we're almost sort of doing it the other way, whereby sort of digital communities reverse into sort of print themed issues. And the communities that we've got on our Tatler Address Book span everything from cosmetic surgeons, of course, to schools, to hospitality. And actually hospitality is a case in point at the moment. We're really trying to make sure that we kind of keep up the momentum with hospitality, so that when things open up again, the pent-up demand has an outlet and has a channel to go to. So you'll see all sorts of themes coming through in our forthcoming issues, from really drawn from the communities that we speak to at the moment.
Kate, thank you very, very much for your input. Greatly enjoyed it. And you'll be staying around for the Q&A and whilst the other speakers speak as well. Moving on, I'd like to introduce Alex Hudson, the editor of Newsweek magazine. Alex retains a very special position in British media. The chairman of Google, nonetheless, singled out Alex as being responsible for changing how TV was watched. He's also been listed as the most influential person in AI in the UK media industry. His special interest is in monetizing media, generating revenues, and ensuring that if people don't pay for content, they still need to pay for journalism. He's been at Newsweek for less than 2 months, and a major focus has been rolling out Newsweek's paywall, which is still in its very preliminary stages. It's a core part of his strategy at Newsweek, building communities and keeping them. The paywall is just one part of that, and we look forward to him expanding on this and other strategies Newsweek will be focusing on over the coming months. Alex, without further ado, welcome. And my first question to you is this. Can you tell us more about why you were brought into Newsweek, and what are your near-term plans for the title?
I think so. Hi, Jez. I was brought into Newsweek International to rebuild it from the ground up. So Newsweek's gone through a lot of restructuring over the last few years, and my job now is to rebuild the international arm. So that's starting with the UK and then looking further afield, whether that be the Middle East, Eastern Asia, or Europe. And it is a huge job. And it's exciting to be able to talk to you sort of right now about it, because it feels like we're right at the start of the journey. So my job is find audiences, work out a way to bring them to the site directly, which I think so many publishers have forgotten how to do with the advent of search and social, and work out a way to keep them. And so the way that Kate was talking about the idea of like the events and the community building that Tatler are doing, I think that's something that Newsweek can work towards doing in the future. So it's an exciting time that I could list off 1,000 different things, but we don't have time for that.
Yeah, Alex, I mean, talking about that, Newsweek was founded in 1933 at the height of the last Great Depression. We don't quite know what we're moving into over the next year, but how have your plans changed since you've arrived at Newsweek? I mean, it's been a tumultuous period to arrive at any title.
I was between jobs, so I went on holiday just before lockdown happened, and so as I was sort of on a holiday between the jobs, I was like, oh, that's escalating quickly, that's changing everything quickly. And I think it hasn't changed the plans at all, but it's just meant that we've had to be more pragmatic about what we can do in the short term, what we can do in the mid-term, and what we can do in the long term. So it's a really small team at the moment, and our plan is to grow it. But it's how you can draw audiences in when there's only really one story in town. And that means editorially, we've had to look at the way that we don't just tell if you want big breaking news at the moment, the BBC is there for that. If you want a sort of analysis, that's where Newsweek can come in. So today we've got a story about the fact that we talked to a head of a union who says that 50% of pubs are going to be closed, and ultimately that's announcing Newsweek to the UK, because we've been away for a good couple of years from the UK market, so now we're back. How can we really engage audiences directly? And that a great deal of that is going into social media, and anyone who's talking about this issue, we go and talk to them directly. How can we build out? So Newsweek is known as a US brand, and that's a great deal of what we do, and that's still our core market. But if we're doing this whole new international arm, how can we go and make people know what we're up to? And that's UK stories bespoke, and that's making sure that everyone knows. You know, you can get traffic from search, you can get traffic from social, but making sure that everyone knows it's a Newsweek story, and everybody knows that they are reading our site, and there is content there for people to come back to.
Got you. Alex, one thing that you're well known for is measuring audiences perhaps differently to other publishers. What propensity data are you using, and what audience metrics are you using to grow the brand and evaluate it?
Okay, you have to stop me here, because I will go incredibly nerdy incredibly quickly. So if it's the age-old thing, I think publishers are now moving past that, is, UVs, page views, visits. Like they're the things that, that all of the analytics software keeps pumping out as we go. But how do you know how often people come back? How do you know their entry point? How do you know what people are coming back to? So we are working on ways to filter audiences by topic type. What topics are they most interested in? What topics do they care most about? And what times of the day? So we're looking at the ways that we can tweak content strategy, so that if we know that an audience who are most news engaged are most likely to come between 9 and 11 in the morning? How can we make sure that the stuff that is most relevant to those audiences fall between 9 and 11 in the morning? How can we make sure that there's an addition of content? So every morning you can come back to a different version of the site than there was yesterday. So in the same way as previous guests have talked about the idea of print not being dead, absolutely print is alive, but alongside that, it's creating additions. And so the propensity scores is how likely, the propensity score is basically how likely is your audience to do a certain activity, and how can you group those audience sets together. So, and depressingly, a lot of audiences are predictable. So we can tell that if you give someone a certain age attribute, if you give someone a certain gender attribute and interest attribute, which is becoming increasingly viable under GDPR regulations, then you can predict what they're likely to do, and you can make sure you're serving content at the right time in the right way, and how you do that in a way that doesn't completely ruin your page speed, which, as we all know, is vital to audiences staying on your site and coming back to your site. How you can do that in a way that really engages an audience, person by person, audience member by audience member, and creating a truly personalized experience while still having editorial oversight is bloody difficult, frankly, but that's what we're trying to get to.
Some publishers take a much more live approach, The Guardian and The Telegraph, for example, whereas The Times will take a much more edition-based approach. Can you tell me which you prefer and why you prefer that?
I'm going to sit on the fence and say both. And the reason is there are many different audience types. So there are so many bits of audience who do not want to read the news for 7 hours a day, and ultimately that might turn out to become harmful to their mental health, as we're all finding. Instagram's harm to mental health and Facebook's harm to mental health. So they want to come in, and there's a phrase around publishing now that people want to be able to complete the news. So you need, whether this be newsletters, whether this be sort of a quick bullet point briefing, or whether this be a short daily podcast of, okay, I want to hear about this for 15 minutes, and that I want to be able to get a grasp of what the news is at that point. And then, so that for an edition-based content is, you need to know when your audience is arriving, and that for each day there will be a portion of content. I think the Times is doing this incredibly well. The Economist is doing this incredibly well. And to an extent, the New York Times Daily Briefing is doing this incredibly well. And alongside that, you cannot miss breaking news. And I think this is where the Times is a slightly different model of, if a big story happens and you're not there on the ground, adding value to those stories and making sure that your expertise in journalism, and your expert journalists are adding value to those stories straight away, you're missing the boat. So if Boris Johnson says something, if that is not live within 15 minutes and you're adding to it as you go, your audience are going to look elsewhere for those stories. And I think magazine journalism and newspaper journalism is different, and I've worked in both now. And I think when Newsweek has to sit is in between those two. So we're still doing the big breaking stories, but at the same time, we have to add value to each of those stories that we're doing, because if you just want a news snap, that's what Twitter's for, that's what Facebook's for. If you want some in-depth analysis, and if you want something that you wouldn't get elsewhere, that's where Newsweek has to be leading those conversations and doing that better than anyone else.
Thank you very much, Alex. I look forward to taking audience questions for you in the Q&A. Thank you. Emily, coming back to you, how is your sound?
I'm hoping my sound is better now.
Oh,
Does it sound better?
Absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. I've given you an introduction already, so I don't really want to go too much more back into that, but it was really talking about the importance of Marie Claire Edit to Marie Claire UK as a brand now, and its diversification away from print, which has ended last year. So my first question to you is, I believe you launched in an agile way. Rather than having a finished platform that you then launched to market, you launched incrementally and went as you went along. Could you explain more about your journey, please?
Yes, of course. One thing I just wanted to make talk about is that we actually have launched the Marie Claire vouchers, and we also run affiliate content on marieclaire.co.uk. When I joined Marie Claire, I realized that to very quickly grow a large revenue line and expand beyond best of content on marieclaire.co.uk, we would have to look at how we create and leverage the brand name. So we looked at a brand that we had actually acquired called Love Fashion Sales. And in that, I realized when we created the Marie Claire Edit, we used part of that technology to be able to create a prototype And in creating the prototype, what I really wanted to do was provide a proof of concept to really test, learn, and develop. So we started with 3 strong core elements, which were strong SEO capabilities, the ability to ingest data feeds from multiple different fashion retailers, and also to create the basic UX experience for our retailers and for our audience. Really, we sort of started with those 3 core elements because we really wanted to understand how our audience has interacted with our site, but also understand how Google indexed our site so that we would be able to develop the site further. Last year in July, we created version 1, and it was because we were such a small site to begin with, we were able to be profitable in our first year. Just to give it some context to the scale and site of the site now compared to what it was previously, in June 2019, we had 5,900 key terms in Google, and we were ranking for 300 key fashion terms in the top 10. In June 2020, we now have 14,000 out of 22,000 pages that we've indexed for key fashion terms. So that's everything from Gucci trainers to Saint Laurent belts, and we now have 1,700 in the top 10. This year, we're mainly focusing on how we build the site out. So by the end of the year, I estimate that we're going to have around 1.3 million SEO fashion pages on site. We'll also have created and finished the development of our machine learning platform that will enable us to ingest feeds at an extraordinary rate of accuracy. And we'll also be looking at, how we expand the automation of our technology. And one of the reasons why I created the Marie Claire edit was, like I said, we obviously have lots of revenue lines on Marie Claire, if I'm an e-commerce perspective. But the marieclaire.co.uk, there was definitely an upper limit to what we could earn from creating affiliate content. So the Marie Claire edit and our voucher code site has really been able to facilitate us to be able to grow and expand what we do. And within the Marie Claire edit, we're looking at, again, expanding. So not just having branded targeted pages. We'll be looking at color and material and how we kind of expand into product pages as well.
I mean, one of the questions that arises from that is, what are your thoughts on the application of AR to link print with digital?
Pardon?
Do you have any thoughts or opinions about AR and QR codes and AR and to link with digital?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've looked at, but it's not on our roadmap at the moment.
Okay. With the benefit of hindsight, I mean, this is quite a launch you've done and quite a journey over the last 2 years. What would you do differently? What are the lessons you would give other publishers looking to do something similar?
I was in a very lucky position when I launched because back in 2011, after I'd worked in finance for 5 years and hated it, I was very lucky to actually set up my own fashion aggregator. And I actually launched that in 2011. So everything that I learned at that time, and I was young, very kind of wet behind the ears, and I fell over a lot, and I learned a lot of lessons. So I guess all the hindsight I got with launching my own business, I was able to kind of bring that knowledge and expertise and experience of, what not to do to launch the Marie Claire edit. And, we're still learning, which, one of the biggest lessons that I learned from doing my own business was, to take things slow. I think I, at the time was very young, very ambitious, wanted everything instantly, as you do when you're in your early 20s. And actually, having that kind of more of a preserved approach to what you're doing and kind of measuring things as you go along actually helps you in the long run become a lot more successful.
What are the key e-commerce trends you're seeing? Have things shifted or changed, or has it been a continuation of what you saw last year?
You mean because of, sorry, I missed the beginning bit of that, Jez. Was that because of COVID?
I mean, the e-commerce trends that you're seeing at Marie Claire Edit over the duration of the pandemic.
So, I mean, like I said, over the course of the year, March was a very difficult month for us. and we did drop quite a lot of sales in March. But actually, first of all, the content that was created on Marie Claire around In This Together, led by Andrea Thompson and Holly Rains, is amazing. But we've just tried to keep it as business as usual on the e-com side. Like I said, March was a difficult month for us, but we really kind of took a step back, and we're quite fortunate actually, because we have the voucher code platform as well. And that is where a lot of sales can funnel into the bottom of the funnel, and especially in a downturn, people will spend money, but they'll want to spend money with a discount. And also, we've optimized our sites. And one great thing about the Marie Claire edit is that actually, when people shop through the platform, maybe 1 out of 300 sales gets sent to a voucher code platform. So we're very much the full e-commerce journey within Marie Claire Edit. But actually in May, from all the optimization work that we've done, we've actually hit higher figures for the month than Black Friday last year. And as of the end of June, estimating where we are now to where we're going to close at the end of the month, we'll probably be on 80% of the total revenue we made last year in terms of growth.
Okay, that's interesting to know. What are the other brand extensions and revenue streams you're looking at moving forwards?
So, like I said, we've got the Marie Claire vouchers, and we've got the Marie Claire Edit, which we've got developmental plans planned out for that. But we're also looking this year to really reduce our reliance on Google. I think as a big main publisher who's got very high domain strength, it's very easy to really kind of focus on SEO and focus on, just being at the top of Google and kind of taking that for granted. But I think one of the big things that I'm focusing on is reducing our reliance on Google, and also looking at how to really bring the touch points of all of the brands that we've created together. So we're actually creating a community, and it has a special USP that hasn't been launched yet within a publishing site, so within any publishing site in the UK. So I'm really excited for that to launch in a couple of weeks. I will be in touch when it does. And then we're also launching a beauty sampling business as well in July. So, and they are very much data focused businesses.
Great. Well, that sounds intriguing. I look forward to hearing the news when you put it into a press release. Please send it over.
Thank you.
Thank you to all my guests today. We've got Kate Slesinger from Conde Nast, we've got Alex Hudson from Newsweek, and we've got Emily Ferguson from TI Media and Marie Claire Edit. So thank you very much, and we look forward to reconvening in a quarter of an hour for the Q&A session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to Jez there for moderating and curating that session. I feel like we've been talking about the monetization of publishing now for years and years and years. And so what's really hopeful about that session for me is the fact that so many people have so many ideas about where we can go next. And also I hope that Google and Facebook are listening, because then they can know that so many people are looking not to rely on them so much in the future. So that old model of BuzzFeed is now well and truly dead. There will be a Q&A starting in about 15 minutes. If you go through to the CogX portal, you can ask as many questions as you like there. The panelists are absolutely fantastic. And if you're looking for further insight into monetization of publishing, I would strongly recommend heading over to that. This is the Createch stage. My name is Alice Thwaite, and it has been a real pleasure hosting you. And I'm sure that there is plenty more interesting content to come, but that is my wrap up of emceeing. Please do reach out to all the participants this afternoon if you've got any further questions. The beauty of it being a virtual conference is that we are actually a lot more available than we would be if we're in a physical space. You don't have to kind of hang out around outside like a stage door or something just to see if you can catch someone like Adrian Lester. So please do keep the conversation going, keep in touch, use the networking portal. The hashtag is hashtag CogX 2020. And yes, do stay around for the Q&A in 15 minutes. That panel was excellent, and I'm sure you've got lots and lots of questions.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.